Get ready to hear from a celebrated and beloved recording artist who had the #1 worldwide hit, Alone Again, Naturally. Buckle on up as you are about to hear about this classic tune sung way back in 1972.
Welcome to the Motivation Show podcast, and get ready to be inspired, motivated, and achieve massive success. And now, your host, the mayor of motivation, Eli Marcus.
Our guest today is a celebrated and beloved worldwide charting artist who has charted 16 top 40 records, including 6 #1 songs. Across his career, he has recorded 20 studio albums. The music magazine Record Mirror voted him the top UK male singer back in the good old days of 1972. His worldwide #1 hit, Alone Again, Naturally, celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2022 and was nominated for 3 Grammy Awards. Welcome to the Motivation Show, Gilbert O'Sullivan.
That's some introduction, Eli. Yeah, it's nice to be with you. And I'm in admiration of where you are, because while it's quite chilly over here, you look like you're in a really warm place.
Well, yeah, it's not a terrible thing to be in Florida in the winter, that's for sure. I don't know from cold. So you have had a very interesting career, and it's always fascinating to me when I can talk to somebody who had hits in the early 1970s, and here we are in 2022, and you're still out there. And I hear that you actually put out a best of collection that you released in 2022. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's in the past we've had TV advertised best ofs, which have done really well. But this time the record company BMG wanted to go with a 3 CD collection. And I have a lot of songs. I've written a lot of songs, so I've made a lot of records with all the albums I've done and stuff. So I was able to kind of pick out all the tracks that apart from the obvious ones, which are all on there, of course. It's just a mixture, which the interesting thing for me is that it involves tracks from many of the albums going back many years. So a lot of people may not have some of these albums. And so therefore they'll pick up on the odd track or two from this collection. I've written them all, so it's kind of nice to have to see this put together. But strangely enough, for the amount of tracks that are on there, I still felt I left off a few that I would have liked to have gone on, so that I have to go on the next selection.
Well, a creative mind like yourself, I'm not surprised there'd be a few others still left over. So what, in your opinion, is different or unique about what you're doing right now versus what you were doing back in the good old days of the 70s?
Well, the good thing is that in terms of what I do, we live in a technological world, which is fantastic. All the technology that's available, particularly in the music business, what we can do in studios. I have my own 48-track digital studio, purpose-built on the grounds of my property. I don't write there. So the great thing for me is going right back to 1965, 66, when I started to write songs. All I needed then was an upright piano in a garden shed to be able to do it, and I borrowed a tape recorder. And then I moved into the 70s. I was able to use cassettes. And to this day, I still use cassettes. I have the sort of 70s Getter blasters with the inbuilt microphones either side. Stick it on top of the piano, put in the cassette, and I'm away. And the process of what I do hasn't changed. It isn't rocket science. Right from day one, it just involves trying to come up with a good melody, and then having got that melody, see where you would go with the lyric. So it's a fascinating process. I love it.
Yeah. And so I hear you have this latest album that you put out, Driven. And I'm very curious what the title has been derived from and what it means.
I think it's because that's pretty much how I am in terms of career, in terms of music and what I aspire to. I'm driven in that sense of wanting to write. I'm very disciplined. I have that brill building mentality for writing songs. Clock in at 9 o'clock in the morning, clock off at 5 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. I think that's an important thing to have, that discipline. So I'm driven in the sense that I'm out there to create good songs, work hard at it, because it isn't necessarily that easy, but it's worth the effort if you come up with the goods.
Well, so many artists put out hit after hit back in the old days, 60s, 70s, and they're all number one charted hits. And then all of a sudden, they go on the road and they're singing all their own songs, but you don't hear a lot of the new songs, and you certainly don't see them as hits. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of not into any kind of self-analysis, Eli, on how, what, or why. I mean, we do a 2-hour set and stuff. So what's nice about a 2-hour concert with my background is the fact that we can incorporate all the best known songs, which are that important, plus album tracks that people, when I meet people afterwards, they'll tell me their particular, much as they love the hit singles, their favorite song would be a particular track from a particular album. And then there's an element of new stuff. We do about three tracks from Driven and tracks from the last album, and a mixture of, a good variety of material, hopefully, which people seem to enjoy. I think that's how I approach these things. It's very important to do the best known songs. But as I say, you meet people and they'll tell you, much as they liked the Claires and the Alone Agains and stuff, for them, their particular favorite is a track that not many other people may have heard of, which would have been on a former album.
Well, Shindig magazine had a great quote about you, and he said, at the age of 75, Gilbert O'Sullivan has just gone and recorded his best ever album. Well, that says a lot, I tell you, best ever. And this is classic, Shine On You, Absolute Legend. How does that make you feel?
Did I pay him to say that? It's not, I'm not used to the interesting thing for me is earlier on in my career, because of the images that I created, it put a lot of people off me and stuff because I didn't conform to what record companies wanted, which was long hair, jeans, look a bit like James Taylor. I didn't do that. I created an image with pudding basin haircut, Charlie Chaplin jacket, really weird and stuff. So, so because of that, how I used to look, I didn't pick up very good record reviews because in a lot of instances with music papers in the UK, all they would talk about was how I looked, not about the songs. So it's interesting now that I'm getting really good reviews for my songs. I mean, it's the same writer, it's the same person who wrote those songs that they didn't write about me. So it's kind of nice. It's reassuring to think that people do take my work seriously, and I'm given some credit for it. Because I always envied, if Ray Davis gave an interview, articles about Ray Davis, McCartney and all those kind of people, Paul Simon and stuff, you name it, great songwriters and stuff. So you felt that there was an opportunity for people to talk to me about songwriting. I've been doing it for as long as they have. So now it's beginning to, so I'm quite pleased. It puts a smile on my face.
Well, if I put out some of the song titles that you did, Alone Again, Claire, Get Down, Out of the Question, Nothing Rhymed, Matrimony, No Matter How I Try, I'd be pretty proud of myself too. Which is one of your favorites and why? I'm sure they're all your kids, but any particular favorites?
Yeah, one of my favorites, not that well known, and particularly because we go to America, is a song I wrote about an element of 9/11 and stuff. I picked up on an aspect of 9/11 that wasn't most of the detail and most of the horror of what was going on was to do with the planes hitting the buildings. But I picked up on a certain aspect of it. I wrote a song called All I Wanted to Say and stuff. So that's always been very special to me. And I've had a lot of letters from people in America over the years since that was released, saying how much they like it. And the great thing was when we went to New York 2 years ago to do for our first appearance in America for so long. Our first appearance was the winery in New York, the old, and I performed it there, and it was quite emotional to sing that song there. And so when we did the winery last year at the beginning,
City Winery you're referring to, right?
The City Winery, when we did it last year at the new building, it wasn't in the set, and halfway through the concert, this man put up his hand in the audience and said, "Please, Gilbert, you must do that song." All I wanted to say. So I looked at my guitar player Bill and said, "Yeah, absolutely." So now it's become a staple diet of our American concerts and stuff. So a song like that means a lot to me. Obviously the well-known songs mean a lot to me for other reasons, but I have all the songs I write, I like, of course, but some that are special to me aren't you wouldn't necessarily know them.
So Bob Seger, and his huge hit, old time rock and roll. He sings, today's music ain't got the same soul. I like that old time of rock and roll. Now, I keep my day job here, but why doesn't today's music have the same rock and roll and great lyrics that it seems that the great songs of the 60s and 70s have? Do you agree with that? I mean, that's just my opinion.
I tend not to. Again, I'm not really bothered about sort of analyzing why or how, what, as I said earlier. There's, a lot of people make those comments and stuff. I mean, I find, here's the key. I remember George Harrison giving an interview in the 80s, I think it was in the 80s, where he said that he didn't like anything he heard on the radio these days. And I'm thinking, and I was thinking to myself at the time, when he was a youngster, when he was a young teenager, he'd have loved everything he heard on the radio. So there is that element that as one gets older, perhaps you look upon it differently. But I find that it's important to find that something out there still gets you. So I search, I look for, whatever's going on in the hit parade today, whatever's going on in albums that are released, I buy everything. I mean, I love John Mayer, I love the 1975, I love Alison Krauss. I buy everything to be influenced, because you can't be a contemporary songwriter, particularly if you're one that doesn't read music. To be able to write songs, you have to hear good songs. That's how it works. When we started writing songs, I wanted to sing like Bob Dylan and write songs like Lennon and McCartney. That's how you learn your craft. And that's how you continue to do it. You don't learn your craft today by writing anything. You learn your craft by listening. And so I'm quite, I find that out there, I come across tracks that really, catch me. And if I don't find it in today's music, I'll go right back to Stephen Foster and search for it there. Because that's how you need to have that element of influence. You need to find stuff that generates influence, that influences you to be able to write songs.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out Don McLean's American Pie lyrics. To me, that's certainly one of the greatest songs ever written. So has a song like that had an influence on you?
Yeah, I mean, here's an interesting thing about Don and I. I'll tell you something which you'll find interesting. We were both nominated in the same year for Grammys. I was nominated for 3, Don was nominated for 4, and we were the only 2 artists who played live. Okay, so I think Andy Williams introduced it, and the word going around the room was that if you were performing there, then you were going to get a Grammy, because Nilsson wasn't there to perform. Roberta Flack wasn't there to perform First Time Ever Saw Your Face. And so Don and I didn't win. And I feel more sorry for him than I do for me, because it's a great American song. Why on earth he didn't pick up a Grammy? Do you know why? Would you know why?
Well, to me, it's one of the greatest songs ever written. So I don't know if there's a song in any year, in my opinion, that should be winning over that particular song. That's my opinion.
It's a great song. I mean, I love, again, I've been influenced by Don in the way that we all need to be influenced. I mean, Vincent is a lovely song. And, so he's a great songwriter, and no question about that.
Well, speaking of great lyrics, in Alone Again, naturally, and I was almost tempted to sing this, but I figured, I better not sing in front of the guy who actually sang it, because you can't beat perfection. So, in your lyrics, it says, and at 65 years old, my mother, God rest her soul, couldn't understand why the only man she had ever loved had been taken. Now, is that a true story about your mother and father? And is that what inspired this great song?
No, it's not true, which surprises a lot of people. I think what makes you a good lyricist is that you don't have to experience a situation to be able to write about it. In other words, an understanding of a subject is the key. And so put yourself into a situation where somebody attempts suicide. That's a serious thing to be writing about. You certainly you can't be flippant about it. But I get into the subject matter. I was 21 years of age. I was writing songs. That's one of the songs I was writing at the time. It didn't appear to be any more special than the other songs I was writing, which is a good thing. And so I got into the story, and it's not based on personal experience, but my understanding of those kind of situations is what I felt worked and came through. As I say, that's what makes you a good lyricist. There's a few instances where I've used experience, but on that particular song, it was just an understanding what I felt somebody might be going through or would be going through during that time. During those kind of situations.
Now, let's take you back to your childhood, because so many artists actually had a different name. So tell us about where you grew up and Is this your real name, or did you have another name? And tell us how you got into the music business.
Well, my real name is Raymond. O'Sullivan is my real name. So Raymond O'Sullivan. So when I started off wanting to be a singer, I called myself Gilbert only. I didn't call myself Gilbert O'Sullivan. I felt as the artist, I would be Gilbert. And if you looked at the credits for the songwriting, you'd see somebody called O'Sullivan. So I kind of liked the fact that could that be the same person, or is that somebody else and stuff? I kind of liked having the two separate. But Gordon Mills, who managed me in '69, he said, call yourself Gilbert O'Sullivan. Remember, he called Engelbert Humperdinck, and he called, and he managed Tom Jones as well. But O'Sullivan is my real name. And so getting into music was, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the key for me were Dylan and the Beatles and stuff. I don't have a great voice. I have a distinctive voice, which I think is a good thing. A lot of good singers sound like a lot of good singers. So if you have a distinctive voice, it sounds only like you. So Dylan was a huge influence for me. And then Lennon and McCartney. When the Beatles arrived, we all wanted to be in a band. It's a bit like when they appeared on the Ian Sullivan Show. Overnight, hundreds of thousands of young people wanted to join a band, form a band after seeing them and stuff. So it was like that for us with Love Me Do and Please Please Me. And they look so different because before they came along, everybody's hair was combed back. And suddenly, for the first time, you have 4 people with fringes with the hair combed forward. And that was really quite revolutionary at that time. And so...
the mop tops.
And they wrote great songs, and they were able to do it without reading. They couldn't read music, so we identified with that. And so I got into school band and played the drums, and I tried guitar, but I'm left-handed. I wrote to Slim Whitman. I think Paul McCartney apparently did too. I think Slim Whitman, we all remember in the 50s, was a huge star. Rosemary, I think he had big hits with, and he was a left-handed guitar player. So I remember writing him a letter saying, could I have a guitar? Because I'm left-handed, but didn't get a reply. So that was it for me, the band as a drummer, and then a youth club band, and then a much more serious band called Rick's Blues. And with Rick's Blues, we could have actually turned professional. I was beginning to write songs. We made some demos of my songs. Rick Davis, a keyboard player, brilliant musician. He was a keyboard player. And if it wasn't for the bass player and the guitarists worried about their apprenticeships, we would have turned professional. But they didn't want to risk giving up their job. So that meant that Rick and I, who both wanted a career in music, had to decide what to do. Rick needed to be in a band. No question, he wasn't a solo performer. So he went on to form a band called The Joint, a band called The Lonely Ones, which ended up becoming Supertramp. So Rick didn't do too badly, and then I ended up becoming me. So that's pretty much how it started.
Well, I want to go back to the 2 people that you were the band and the great person you had mentioned twice already, the Beatles and Bob Dylan. Did you get a chance to meet them, and did you get a chance to pick their brains?
No, I mean, McCartney. I was invited to a McCartney reception when he brought out his second solo album and stuff. And, he was there with his wife, and they were in the corner dancing away in this ballroom and stuff. And I didn't, I'm not one of those people that need to go up and bother people and stuff. So my admiration remains fully. McCartney is, I was more of a McCartneyite than a Lennonite. But they were a huge influence because, as I said to you, they were young and they wrote great songs and they couldn't read music. So for us to hear that, to know that, meant that possibly we could do something similar. So once the ball started rolling, I mean, in the same way they were influenced by Buddy Holly. And what made them, interestingly enough, what made them great songwriters is because if you look at the kind of songs they sang songs from 50s musicals. Till There Was You from I think that was, what was that musical called? I'm not sure the musical, but, traditional kind of MOR, middle of the road stuff is what they performed. And Mr. Lovin', written by Phil Spector and stuff. So their background in terms of what they listened to was a huge influence for the songs they were writing. Whereas today, it's much more difficult for young writers. The way the business is today, it's about sound. It's more about sound than it is about song. There are good songs, but I think it's more. So I think as young songwriters, my advice to young songwriters is to listen to great songs. Go back and listen to the likes of Lennon and McCartney, the Don McLeans of this world, the Paul Simons, the James Taylors. See how the craft works.
I've probably sang Alone Again Naturally probably 100 times listening to it on radio over the decades. And so I'm curious, how long does it take to write a song like Alone Again Naturally? And did you have the sense when you were writing it that it would be the monster hit that it became?
No, God forbid that should happen. I mean, that would not be a good thing, because if that happened then, you'd want that to be happening every time you wrote a song. So that's not going to work. No, it's I was a young writer. I was lucky because this is at a point where, prior to meeting Gordon Mills, my manager, the songwriting I was doing was in my flat after work or on the weekend and stuff. I had a piano in my little bedsit. So when Gordon Mills took me on, it meant that I could give up my job as a postal clerk and I could write all day in a cottage that he owned. So that was a joy for me. So writing Alone Again was just one of 3 or 4 songs I was writing at that time. And the way it works was you were either planning to, you wouldn't necessarily be going to make an album. You'd be having a 3-hour session to do 2 songs for your next single, A-side and a B-side. So the 2 songs that I'd written were Alone Again and Out of the Question. I liked both of them, no problem. I didn't think one was any better than the other. They were both very different. And so when we went to the studio to record them, everybody in the studio thought, because this was going to be the next single, that Out of the Question should be the release, because they felt that was more commercial.
Wow.
And so, but in the end, Gordon Mills said, maybe Alone Again isn't as commercial, but I think it's a better song. So let's go with that, see what happens. And it was a big hit in England, but I have reviews of that, which I tend to look at, which bring a smile to my face. And they say things like, another little jinky from Gilbert could be a hit if it gets enough play. So it's kind of nice to see that. And of course, we know what happened when it took off in America, and it was just phenomenal and stuff. So, but yeah, it doesn't, it just works. Just be happy with your song and you'll see what happens. It'll work or it won't work. And if it doesn't work, you'll write another one and stuff.
I like that. Wow, that's very inspirational. It's like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't get yourself too down on anything, because there's always tomorrow, and you can put more pen to paper, right, Gilbert?
Absolutely. No question at all. Don't dwell on what hasn't happened and stuff, because we all know about great songs that don't see the light of day. I mean, I know many songs that were never hits, and yet they were great songs. Going right back to soundtracks and musicals, the Cole Porters, the Rodgers and Harts, the Rodgers and Hammerstein, they wrote songs and musicals that nobody touched. It took something else for them to work. The luck, the judgment factor comes into play. So you can write a really good song, but if you don't have that luck and judgment and timing, it can disappear. But that's where the joy of a concert, Eli, comes in, because that's where you can actually get to perform certain songs you really like, which weren't successes in the single sense, but you look upon as a good song, and the reaction you get to it can be very interesting too.
Well, speaking of concerts, Gilbert, I see you are out touring these days, and you'll be in New York City at one of my favorite music venues in the World City Winery. You'll be there on March 12th, and I actually plan on being there. I'd like to see you live. That would be a treat. I didn't catch in the good old days, so never better late than never.
Absolutely, you must come back and see us. Absolutely, look forward to that.
Absolutely, and I understand you'll be in other great American cities throughout March. Can you share your website and where listeners can find out more about your touring? I
can, because I'm totally I'm computer illiterate. I
can share it.
but Tara does all the social media.
Gilbert O'Sullivan.co.uk. That's Gilbert O'Sullivan.co.uk. And you have an incredible repertoire of music that I've been listening to lately. And I can't wait to actually come and see you live. And I want to commend you for having all these decades of success and still being out there when, so many people hung up the shingle, long time ago. So congratulations on it. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
I think what's interesting is that I have a really great band. I mean, the reason it took so long to get back into America from the 70s was the fact that I have a really good band. Up to about 3 years ago, we toured consistently around Europe, Japan, the UK and Ireland and stuff. But in the last 2 years, we decided, my guitar player, to do an up-close and personal intimate show, just the two of us. And that worked out really well. And that's what we're doing for you. And the joy of that is that it's close and personal, it's intimate, over 2 hours, just the two of us. So people get to hear the lyrics clearly, because some of the criticism I used to get with the band was we really enjoyed the show, but it was so loud we couldn't hear the words that we wanted to hear. So with it just being the two of us, it's that up close and personal, kind of intimate. And the club, the winery, the New York winery, is an ideal venue.
Oh, spectacular. Oh, yeah.
For being up close and personal. So that's what we'll bring to you, and we're really looking forward to it. Thus far, Eli, the reaction to us doing this has been fantastic.
So am I going to be able to make a little bit of a fool of myself and actually sing some of the lyrics along with you?
We can plant a mic on your chair if that's what you'd like.
Well, thank you so much, Gilbert. You've been a joy to talk to you today, and I'll be seeing you on March 12th.
I look forward to meeting you, Eli. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
If you would like to inquire about having Eli motivate your team, speak at your event, or coach you personally for massive success, email themotivationshow@gmail.com. That's themotivationshow@gmail.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.